Smith and Hesson podcast. I'm Laura McGoldrick, and things have changed a little bit since we last caught up back in lockdown, and what better way to spend your lockdown than catching up with the cricket news. So let's catch up now with Mike Hesson and Ian Smith. Hes, I'll start with you because you must be getting ready to head over to Dubai for the second part of this year's IPL. How are you feeling? Current state of the world, I imagine there are some nerves.
Yeah, certainly some challenges, Laura. Obviously, firstly, getting out of New Zealand. I live down in Dunedin, so obviously got to go through the logistics of that. But yeah, it's been a busy time with the IPL starting again and a replacement window and lots of different tours happening at the same time. So a little bit different than your normal IPL and a few different challenges around trying to get your team together, during a different time of the year where there's not so much that window purely allocated to the IPL.
And Ian Smith, would you believe now we currently have with us the head coach of RCB? He's not just in charge of it all, he's back to coaching. I'm not surprised, do you?
Oh, I'm not really surprised because, double the job, double the salary, Laura, so that's how it works in the IPL. So if I'm going to do I'll be chief cook and bottle washer, to be fair, if they're on the payroll as well. I know, sensible move, better in a situation like that when it's a last-minute thing, better to know and run with a guy that knows the operation. He is the boss there, let's be fair, who knows the operation, knows the players, knows the squad members, knows the whole system, rather than bringing a guy in cold mid-competition and to work with a squad that's already pretty settled, albeit having this time apart. So I've been very interested to follow the progress of all the teams, really, and a lot of people in the same situation here. For me, of people coming and going, and you've had to make changes as well as have a lot of the squad members in the situation whereby people just aren't as available at this time of the year, or injuries, etc., have made the scenario. I don't know. It's like a patchwork quilt, really, putting it all back together.
Yeah, that's fair. And it was pretty much last minute before everybody's availability was confirmed. So I guess every team's sitting there going, well, look, what's Cricket Australia going to decide? Are they going to release their players, allow them to come or not? And I think the lockdown in Australia's basically led to a point where it's actually going to be better preparation for their team for the World Cup if they actually play in the IPL. So that was sort of a last minute thing. ECB originally was playing in Bangladesh. That tour got cancelled, so therefore the ECB players were available. That was all relatively last minute as well. So once you got to that point, then you only at that stage didn't know who was available, and then you had to try and fill in the gaps. So you're right. I think a piecemeal quilt is probably a good reflection of how most sides are thinking. But from a personal point of view, we kind of had a heads up that the New Zealand guys were going to be unavailable, both Finn and Scott Kugelheim. So that, we knew we had a couple of replacements needed to fill. We just had to wait to find out about the Australian boys.
Hes, are you looking forward to taking on the role of head coach again? It's been a couple of years between drinks, but I imagine you'll just slip right into old habits. Have you been warming up your shoulder? Are you ready to start?
Well, I've only had about 3 or 4 days' notice, Laura, so I haven't been able to do a huge amount. We've been in lockdown, and all the gyms are closed and stuff. So I'm going to have to certainly do a bit of work on the shoulder, just to try and get a little bit more movement in it. But to be fair, it won't be hugely different. Probably more on match days, actually getting out there and amongst it. I'm in the dugout anyway, and I'm sort of part of the decision making. Albeit, I'm more there in an advisory capacity, whereas now it'll be a little bit more at the forefront. So, just working with the coaching team, and I think as Smithy alluded to, it's a far easier transition than getting someone in fresh and trying to reinvent the wheel. We'll just be basically continuing what we were doing with some minor tweaks. So looking forward to getting back on the tools again.
Yeah, Smithy, so it's good for us if we're stuck in here in lockdown for a little while longer. We'll have some IPL to watch as well as some other international cricket. But as Hes mentioned, we've got no Fennell and no Scott Kugelheim back for RCB. But Glenn Phillips has been picked up by the Rajasthan Royals, and he has had a stellar couple of months, has he? What, in the 100, he was simply sensational. I'm excited to see what he's going to go over there and do, and that just leads into perfect preparation for the T20 World Cup, right?
Yeah, it does actually. It's a really good sign that that he's been able to find consistency across the board in these white ball competitions. It's also another. I think it's another example of just how one good thing can lead to another good thing. There's so much white ball cricket being played, so much franchise cricket being played around the world, and there'll be more too when we get out of this horrible COVID situation, that he's found a nice little career path where he's going to develop well. But the word I like, and I'll use again, is consistency. Sometimes these young kids come in and fly by night. We know how dynamic they can be, but being dynamic, if that means coming off 1 times out of 10, it is not good enough. This guy obviously now has found a way, a method to be consistently excellent. And that augurs well for what we've got coming up. So, Glenn Phillips, I think is going to be an integral part of that World T20, the way he's playing. He has to be.
We'll have our eye on the IPL, and we'll also have our eye on the CPL. The Caribbean Premier League gets underway on Friday. We've got Kiwis involved there. We've got Glenn Phillips again. Tim Seifert is another interesting one. And there was some talk about him maybe not being the first one that the gloves are handed to for the World T20. Mike Hesson, what do you think of that?
Look, he's got to make his way into the playing 11. I think that's fair. And I think there's a lot of resources at the top of the order. Obviously, Martin Guptill will be a lock-in. And then decided what they do with the guy like Devon Conway. Do they want the left-right combination in conditions that could turn? Therefore, obviously, having that left-right-hand combination is important if the opposition are going to start with spin. So Devon Conway is a real option at the top. I guess they're going to want to find out during these tours what his capabilities are with the gloves in challenging conditions. And that'll be the test for Devon Conway, and Gary Stead will be really interested to find that out. In the subcontinent, Smithy will know that it's a different kettle of fish, keeping over there compared to keeping in New Zealand or South Africa where Devon's come from. So that will be a challenge, Smithy. I mean, how do you think that he will go from what you've seen?
Well, he's got to work at it. You don't get good at it by accident. I mean, I know he's a naturally gifted cricketer, particularly with bat in hand, but it's an art that requires a lot of work, a lot of tinkering, and you just can't substitute wicket keeping in the nets or anywhere in the outfield for actually wicket keeping in the middle. You have to be in that situation where you experience those conditions, and the ball will turn. It'll keep high, it'll keep low. There'll be variation and bounce. So you cannot simulate that, and you can't really do it without a batsman in front of you in a competitive situation, because whilst you're practicing those things out in the middle in an open wicket situation, there's no pressure. There's absolutely no pressure. If you get something wrong, so be it. You just work at that skill. The fact of the matter is you can't simulate the pressure situations. Last ball of the game, a scenario where you're standing up to the stumps perhaps. He runs past one. Do you get it? Leg buys. Where do you position yourself? All those scenarios in terms of being the integral part of wicket keeping, you cannot practice unless you're practicing in game situations. So if they're going to use them, they've got to use them straight away and use them often.
Yes, I'd love to get your thoughts on Colin Munro. Now, he missed the cut for the T20 World Cup. We'll see him in action in the CPL, of course, and he was very vocal, as he often is, on his social media, saying how gutted he was to not have made the cut for that T20 World Cup. And Gary said good. He was glad to see that, Colin was disappointed because the hunger, to play for New Zealand is obviously still there. Were you surprised that they made that decision? Would you have put him in your team? What do you make of it?
Look, I wasn't surprised. I mean, Collins hasn't played for New Zealand for a while. He's been picked and playing in some franchise tournaments and been doing well as well. And he's played nicely. He's also done some different roles. So he batted more through the middle order. So he's got that flexibility. He's got that experience. But it's very difficult to fit everybody in. I mean, obviously they gave Finn Allen some opportunities against Bangladesh, and he fired in the last one and showed how capable he was. But when you've got a guy like Kane Williamson, you also don't want to be able to slide him too far down the order. And I think that will be a thought in their decision-making as well. You've got Glenn Phillips at 4, you've probably got Kane at 3. It's really difficult to put everybody in the top 4. And that's where, New Zealand's got a huge amount of depth. Colin Munro has been experienced. He's got 4 international hundreds. On his day, he's exceptional. But it just looks like, the selectors have sat down and gone, look, we just can't fit him in. He's going to have to miss out to a guy like, I guess Tim Seifert's probably one that has come in there. He also covers the top of the order. So when you keep a bat, covers the top. And you have to have at least 2 of those within your squad. You've got Glenn Phillips as well, who can bat sort of in the middle. You've got Conway. So you've got 3 keepers over there that all bat in the top 4. It's just difficult to fit everyone in. And I do feel for Colin because I know it was something that he was really keen to be a part of, and I'm sure if he went over, he would have done well. But you've got to make decisions as selectors, and I think New Zealand have. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite satisfied with the side that we picked. To be fair, if I was Adam Milne, I'd probably be a little bit more frustrated as well because he's been probably the best bowler across the circuit for the last 12 to 18 months. So he's another guy who probably could have sat there and gone, geez, I probably wish I was in that 15. I know he's in the 16, but he's probably unlucky not to be in the 15.
The Blackcaps have a tour of Bangladesh, which is 5 T20s. And look, I mean, everyone's really looking forward to seeing the Blackcaps back in action. And it's a great opportunity for a lot of young gentlemen, Ben Sears, Colin McConchie, Rachin Ravindra. Who are you most looking forward to seeing have a crack over there in Bangladesh conditions, Mike?
Well, for me, it's Rachin Ravindra, and I've talked about him for a long time, to be honest. When he went to England and was in that squad for the World Test Championship, I thought he was, a possibility of playing, batting at 7 potentially and doing a job there. And I still think he's, a big part of the future in all 3 formats of the game. So I want to see him get his first opportunity and see how he goes, see if he can play with that freedom that he does at the levels below, domestically and New Zealand A. He's just a really good all-round cricketer. Knows his game well, can bat pretty much anywhere. Left-hander, he's got a power game. So he's probably the one I'm really looking forward to seeing the most. And Ben Sears is probably another. He's got that X factor. New Zealand's always looking for guys with pace, and when he gets it right, he's quick. And he's skiddy quick. So he's got a low arm, so he should be able to get the ball to tail back in the subcontinent. And anybody that does that gives yourself a good chance. So those are probably 2 that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they operate.
Smithy, there's a lot to gain for the young up-and-comers in this New Zealand squad that's been picked, but also some for the slightly older gentlemen in the team, the more senior players, the ones we've seen before, like your Doug Bracewells and your Will Youngs. It's a really good opportunity for them to step up and just remind people exactly what they're capable of.
Laura, this is just a gift from heaven, if you like, I think, for New Zealand cricket and the New Zealand cricket selectors. In the past, we wouldn't have had the nucleus of players to do what they've done now. We would not have had the number of players to send worthwhile, strong-looking sides to different venues around the world at different times. It just wouldn't have happened. You'd have had to open up the Auckland phone book and get a dart out and try and just pick people at random. You just couldn't do it. You just simply couldn't do it. The plus side, apart from the individuals, is the grouping now, the strength in the grouping now that we can afford to be able to do that. And so, yes, we're going to have a mixture of young and old as we send these various teams away. There's always a chance when you're playing for New Zealand, when you're playing for your country, you're going to do something special and you're going to say to the selectors, don't forget me, I'm here if anything goes wrong. And things do go wrong over a period of time. This is like a glorified New Zealand A situation for me, when you give your next level of players experience on the basis at some stage you might need them to fill gaps. This is perfect, absolutely perfect. I know it's happened for the wrong reasons, but it's a bit of a blessing for our cricket, and it gives those players, those ones close by, gives them the knowledge that they are on the radar, they're very, very close, and it gives them the exposure in tough situations to prove that they'll be ready. I think it's, in a way, it's quite wonderful.
It's wonderful, but it's certainly not going to be easy. I mean, we saw Bangladesh made Australia look pretty average with a 4-1 series win. So, I mean, that team will be under no illusions it's going to be easy, will they, Hess?
No, I think anybody that's played in Bangladesh knows the challenges that you face, both on and off the field. Conditions are very foreign. They are. It's quite an aggressive environment in terms of how you operate. Everybody's. You feel like it's quite claustrophobic, really, in terms of everywhere you are in Bangladesh, and they do scrap hard, especially at home. They are very, very hard to beat. So, Australia have found by the side they sent over was probably a very good side in Australian conditions, but clearly exposed in those conditions over there. I think Dan Christian came out and said they were the most challenging conditions he's ever played in. And I don't expect New Zealand will have anything different. They will spin, they will stop, they will be challenging to play expansive cricket. So going to have to come up with some real cricket smarts over there. So it'll be a good challenge.
Smithy, who do you think's the key to that series for New Zealand?
Oh, look, the batsman. The batsman being able to cope with the variations in the pitch conditions. So those guys who have got the job at the top of the order to make sure, they'll open with spin. They'll have spin very, very close to the situation. So those key players at the top to make sure New Zealand have a decent base, a decent target for Bangladesh to have to go and chase under pressure. Look, if we come away with a respectable series, if we won the series, I think it would be absolutely remarkable, just judging on what they did to Australia. So I'm not expecting great things there, but I think the best thing that will come out of it is a number of players learning how to play and learning how to adjust and formulate new plans very, very quickly.
While we're on the topic of Australia there, just speaking of them quickly, I'd love to get your thoughts on this Justin Langer situation that seems to be ever evolving. There's constant conversations around, has he lost the dressing room? Do people respect him anymore? What's he doing? Should he be in all three formats as the coach? With the Ashes coming up, I mean, it's a serious conversation. Cricket Australia has come out and said they back him 100%. They fully support him. What do you make of it? He's, as a coach, you don't want those conversations happening around you, do you?
No, you don't. And I think from what I hear, that decision came out before they spoke to some of the key leaders as well. The captains, Tim Payne, Aaron Finch, was certainly waiting to give their thoughts on things, and not sure what they were, but the decision was made before they even spoke to them, which I think creates even more indecision. Look, I guess as a coach, your job is to maximise talent. It doesn't matter what your style is, what your method is, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. It actually doesn't matter. It's just whether you're the right fit for that group at that particular time. And that's the decision that Cricket Australia need to make. And they need to listen to the players. It's not a matter of ganging up on the coach or whatever. It's just a matter of going, is this guy the right guy for us, as a team at the moment to drive us forward? And in Justin Langer's case, it might not be. It might not be right time, right place for him. His method might just not suit the current group of players. Doesn't mean he's done anything wrong. It just means that he's not the right guy for the job at the time. And if that's the case, you would like to think that as a coach you would know that. And Justin Langer is a very smart man. So rather than hanging on, I think he's got to make a decision, doesn't he, in terms of, is where there's smoke, there's fire, and am I constantly getting it in the back from people that I'm supposed to be coaching? Because if so, it's really untenable. For his own sake, I think it's probably better that he jumps out. But once again, you don't know all the facts, but there's certainly something happening, and he just has to decide, is he the right man for this group at this time?
Yeah, Smithy, what do you think? You've been around long enough now. You've, to coin one of his phrases there, where there's smoke, there's fire, often is the case when you start to hear these little murmurings of unhappy camps when it comes to the coach. What do you make of the Langer situation?
Well, I'd want to know, has he lost the test match dressing room as well? Has he lost the one-day dressing room, the T20 dressing room? Because they're all different dressing rooms. They're different squads of players we're looking at here. So if he's lost a lot, then he simply has to go. The biggest thing, second biggest thing, is the Ashes. Now, what the Australian, that's coming up, of course, and it'll be here on Sky over the course of this summer coming up, not that far away, actually. So you've got the T20 World Cup on the radar, then he's got the Ashes back to back. Now, if he's lost all three dressing rooms or all those, he can't exist. He wouldn't want to exist, surely. Human nature says you don't want to be in a place where they don't want you, especially across the board in such an important job. Now, there's few tougher little buggers that I know than Justin Langer. He is a tough cookie. He's resilient. He's used to taking it tough, and he's used to being able to handle it and cop it. When you cop it from those people that you're not supposed to be copping it from, that changes the rules for me. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Definitely, yes. I know it's a nice job. It's a high-profile job, and it's probably well paid, not as well as his players, and that's half the issue, obviously. But the fact of the matter is, if you are not wanted in an international sport around those key situations, you've got to go. You've got to go, and I would not be surprised to see if they don't have a very good T20 World Cup campaign. He might not be there for the Ashes. He might not. Australia do tend to act very quickly when they do act. When they make their mind up to act, it's usually very, very final and very quick.
We've got the T20 World Cup coming up. We've talked about a lot, but also we've obviously got the Women's Cricket World Cup, the 50 over World Cup happening the very beginning of next year, which is hugely exciting. And that makes this White Ferns tour of England even more important in the build up for that. And it's an even bigger series for coach, talk about coaches again, Bob Carter. Mike Hesson, what do you think and what can we expect to see from these 3 T20s and 5 ODIs for New Zealand? Bearing in mind last night they played their warm-up game and New Zealand lost against England A by 4 wickets.
Yeah, look, I think, I saw that game. I saw Susie Bates got a score, which was great. Katie Martin got over 50 as well. So those two sort of come out of the blocks pretty good. But yeah, 226, I think it was, and that got chased down relatively comfortably. Look, I think you can expect that sometimes coming out of the off-season. It's tough to hit the ground running, but this will be a very tough series for New Zealand. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're missing Amelia Kerr for personal reasons to stay at home. So, and Amelia's a huge part of their side, both with bat and ball. So, even with her playing, it would have been a tough series. It's now going to be more so. They're going to lean heavily on the likes of, Devine, obviously Susie Bates, Amy Satterthwaite, as usual. Those three are going to have to score the bulk of the runs. Hopefully, there'll be some other contributions throughout. But England are a very good side. They've also just played the 100 over there, so they will be match hardened. All of their players have been part of that tournament, which has been, got a lot of exposure and it's been a decent standard of cricket as well. So the England side will be well prepared. Bob Carter will have a tough ask in terms of getting his side up to speed quickly. And obviously he's coming off a pretty tough run as well. So, look, we obviously wish the best. And if New Zealand were to win a series over there, whether it be the one-day one or the T20, I think that would be a fantastic achievement because this England side is very, very good.
And Smithy, I guess, would Bob Carter, the head coach of the White Ferns there, be bringing up the World Cup? I mean, we saw firsthand, firsthand with 92, what it's like to have a World Cup in your backyard, how special, how big a deal it is. Would you be talking about that yet, or is it a little bit too soon?
I would be thinking about it if I'm Bob Carter. I'd also be thinking about whether I'm going to be part of it. With the record at the moment, it's not good. They've lost a lot of games. They've lost a lot quite badly as well. So, in form of some of the senior players and the other thing has sort of dropped off. So I'm just hoping that he's got that in mind himself. Sure, they should be using it as an incentive. There are limited opportunities now. We don't know how much cricket will be played here at home, particularly between now and that World Cup. So every opportunity that you get on the world stage now is one that you simply have to grab. And that would be what I was saying. They have to be a bit more desperate than they have. They have to demand a little bit more of themselves. To lose is not acceptable at international level on a regular basis. And that is what has been happening to them. If they want to be genuine contenders, if they want the people of New Zealand to be right in behind them and pay their money to go and support the group, they have to come in with some sort of form and some performances that warrant that. So this is hugely important for me. This is a rare opportunity for them to make a statement. And the best way to do it is to make it against a side that you should not be beating on a regular basis. Turn around and beat them. Don't use that as a crutch to say, okay, we won 1 or 2 games. We found out a couple of things. Really? That's not the way. It's not the way it should be when the side has a record like that. They got to be desperate. And I make no apologies for being hard on them. That is it. Professional sporting people have to have questions asked of them, and this tour will ask a few of that squad. They have to be better than they have been.
Well, we wish the White Ferns all the very best in that series. The first T20 starts on Thursday, the 2nd of September. And other cricket news, of course, Chris Cairns has come off life support after having emergency surgery in Sydney. And we send our thoughts and prayers and love to him, his family, Lance, his mother Sue, his wife Mel, and his children for what would have been a truly horrendous time. So great to hear some good news on that front. Well, gentlemen, I think we should leave it there. We've covered off everything that's coming up, and there'll be more from us at some stage here. So I imagine we're going to catch up with you in Dubai for that second part of the IPL. So all the very best, safe travels, and good luck there, Coach.
Thank you.
And
thank you very much.
Smithy, thank you so much. You're sounding great on the radio. Love listening to it.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Hes. Travel well. Stay safe.
Thank you all.
You guys stay safe, everyone.
See you,
Thank you
Laura.
so much for joining
Cheers,
us.
Smithy.
We'll see you next time on the Smith and Hesson podcast.